there, and hope you are all doing great today. It is a beautiful day here in Florida. But yeah, I really wanted to talk to you about me and my husband's love story. I think it is fitting because it is still February, and before the end of the month, I really wanted to talk about it. And we also kind of give some tips and things we've learned in our marriage at the end of the video. So I hope you all like it, and I will see you. Me and Noah met back in 2018, and we were both at a ministry school. That whole story is crazy on its own, so I have a podcast talking about it, but it was really cool. A school that we were kind of like in this leadership program, and we had separate teams, and he was not in my team. I was in a separate team, but we were like competing against each other sometimes and whatnot. But at that time, we really didn't find interest in each other. So it was not love at first sight, type of thing. We were in different kind of like mentalities. This was his first time out of high school. I had already been in college for 2 years. So this was like my third year in college. And it was just a different situation. But yeah, he was with his people and I was with my people. And that was kind of how it all started, but there was no interest at that point.
We weren't really that close, and this was probably like, I guess, February because it was Valentine's Day. That's kind of when I first caught her eye a little bit. Was we put on this thing, which was a tradition for the school, which was really cool, like an event for Valentine's Day, and it was where the guys in the school would kind of coordinate this dinner event for the women, which was really cool, really thoughtful. So we would coordinate catering for food and just setting up tables and kind of the whole flow of the night. So it was really a cool idea. Anyways, that was the first event that really caught my eye because Alex was wearing this beautiful dress. It was this blue dress. I still remember it. But anyways, that was the first time where I really was like, wow, I need to get closer to this girl because she's like a catch. And albeit we still had different friend groups, but after that, like I kind of wanted to make an effort of like, let me try to just be closer friends with her. Maybe she's more of a cooler type of person than I thought. And I remember a funny thing happened a couple months later. It was the end of March, but we were with like, it was me and her and a couple other people were kind of outside talking, I think during lunch on one of the school days. And they were talking about doing different pranks for like April Fools, which was coming up in a few days, right? Because it was the end of March. And for whatever reason, somebody had mentioned about doing like a fake proposal. And I was like, hey, I'll do that to Alex. And, because Alex was there in the group. So I'm like, how about we do a fake proposal for April Fools? And I don't know why the idea kind of stuck. And it was funny because like we still weren't good friends. I'm like, we'll do this whole thing. We'll have people take pictures, but we'll do it like the church that the ministry school is at, have this whole grassy area. So like, we'll do it there. It'll be pretty, and then we'll post it on social media on April Fools, and say that we got engaged. And so, funny enough, like we did that, and a few friends helped us take pictures, and they actually looked pretty great, even though like I didn't even have a ring or anything. So we posted on social media with like very cliche captionings just for a joke. And the amount of people in our life that really thought that we were actually engaged was hilarious. And I always joke about it because I'm like, in Christian circles, it is so common for people to get engaged like so quickly, and you may not even see them on somebody's social media at all before they're engaged. So that was like, I guess it does make more sense looking back on it why so many people thought that we were actually engaged. So it was a funny joke, really. Everyone in the school knew it was a joke, but it was fun just kind of playing that prank on some relatives and some other friends. And but that was kind of the start. And after that, like me and Alex still kept getting a little bit closer. But I don't know. It was a funny moment that we were able to share together, and something that I think is so ironic when we look back on it.
During the summer, Noah had gone to a missions trip to Romania, and it was really cool for him. And we were already friends. Like he was saying, we became close friends. We were hanging out more. And after that trip, he invited me and this other friend to his house because he wanted to share some stories and some videos that he had taken from this trip. And we were just chilling at his house. So that was what was happening. And all of a sudden, I could tell he was filled with faith. And there was another point before we were this close as friends that I like had asked him and talked to him about, like, I feel the Lord is really operating in your life right now and all of that. But in this time while we were at his house, he just started sharing so much goodness from the Lord, and he was just sharing not just what he experienced, and that already filled us all up with faith, but he was talking things directly to us, and he ended up prophesying over me and this girl. And I'll tell you, like, I've never had a man do that before. And maybe that's the only reason, like, I was like immediately like,
What?
he must be the one or something. But in that moment when he was prophesying over me, it was really cool because it was about like how it was more like the Lord was calling me to more than just worship, you know? And it's cool because now, as the years have passed, I can see that's true because I've been a worshiper forever. Like, worship leading was my thing. But I always didn't feel content just being a worship leader. And I never even wanted to be like a worship leader or pastor. But there was something else that the Lord was brewing in me. And I'm so excited because now it's like in the fruition of it. I'm doing content and I want to be a mother, and like other things are happening. So it was so cool that that was kind of like what he was saying to me. And yeah, in that moment, I remember after we talked, I drove home and I was like, he's it. Like, he is the one. He is the love of my life. I don't even know how, but I fell in love with him instantly. And that was the beginning of how I fell in love with him. And obviously, at that time, he wasn't super interested in me. He'll talk a little bit about what was going on with him at that time, but I could tell he wasn't really into like me like that. But I persevered, and he denied me twice. It's funny because it's like a joke of like Peter and Jesus, like obviously different, but like he denied me twice, and it was hard to be rejected like that twice from the man you know is from the Lord and is the one you're going to marry. So it was kind of weird, but eventually like something snapped for him, and yeah, it started growing. So
Okay, so yeah, school starts back up in August, and we're going into our second year of this program, right? And funny enough, we were both trying to explore a relationship with two different people. Alex's was probably back in like May, and then for mine, I had started a relationship with somebody in June, I believe. So that was tough because me and Alex, we're friends, especially after the fake proposal event. But we were both kind of going separate paths a little bit, and of course, the both relationships didn't end up working out. Alex's ended before mine did, so I think hers ended in like June, and then mine ended in like July. So it was quick, right? And that's something I think you'll see that like in ministry school. At least you probably should see it, honestly, where it's like you're dating with the intention to marry. So normally, within a couple months or so of like, this isn't a good fit, or maybe it is, right? The new school year was starting. We were both single. And, but for me, it was tough because I was fresh out of that relationship. I almost felt like I was developing this reputation of like, I don't know, being this guy who tries to jump around and date all these girls. And it was just bad. I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna start this year. I'm not gonna think about dating. So with all that being said, thankfully me and Alex were still friends. And as the year started, even though I was trying to stay away from dating, I was still kind of a mess. I was in a spot where I almost got back together with the girl I had been with over summer, and then that kind of ended for good. And so then I was just like, I don't even know what to think. Even though I was so committed to not wanting to be in a relationship because I was just kind of embarrassed and stuff, I still felt this thing inside me of like, no, I feel like I'm supposed to be in a relationship. I feel like I'm supposed to be working towards getting married. And so all that being said, like Alex really and I, we grew to be really good friends during that time. As she might have mentioned, I did have a time where she had kind of shown me her feelings and told me about her feelings for me. And I was just, I don't know, it was right in that spot where, again, a few weeks after I tried getting back with the other girl from summer, and I was still recovering. So I'm just like, I just kind of shut it down. I'm like, I just am still messy right now. But I told her, like, I kind of left the door open a little bit. But me and Alex, we still remained friends, and we were able to still be close during that time. And a few months passed while we were kind of just still growing our friendship and getting closer. And I don't know when it kind of started to make sense. I think it was at a time where a lot of stuff was actually changing in our school. So over the summer, something I didn't mention was the school went through a lot of changes with our staff and with our structure. So a lot of us when the year started, we were optimistic. But I know for me personally, like now at this point, it'd be like November or so. I was kind of at the point where I was not really in favor of some of the changes that were done, and I just felt like I didn't belong there that much. And funny enough, like Alex was one of the only people I knew that really felt a similar way about it. So I think this really bonded us a lot, for more than just a close friendship to like just being really bonded. And we just started hanging out one on one, like going, maybe to the beach here in Florida, or going to see a movie or something like that. Because a lot of the other friends I was close with did not feel the same way that I did about the school, and so it was kind of awkward because they were still like really about it and they were still big fans of it, but I was like growing a little bit distant from this ministry portion of it. And so yeah, during that time though, that's I think when I really opened my eyes of like how incredible Alex is and was, in that moment. I realized that it's just like, it's so hard to find a girl where you just feel this bond and this kind of like emotional tie and connection of like, I feel like we, saw the world so similarly. We felt really strong about how we wanted to be parents one day. Like it was so similar. We would talk about things in like the church, like just like the Christian church as in general in the world, and like stuff, thoughts we felt, and things like different opinions. And it is cool like how that lined it up. And also just like our walks with the Lord growing up were very similar, and things that I started realizing like, oh wow, this is really special. With all the girls I've ever dated before, I've never had anything like that. For me, it really sparked of like, I feel like there's something more here. I feel like even though I was just a couple months prior in this thing with this other girl, like weirdly enough, like I felt like I kind of healed from that. And I'm like, this is just something where I know that if I keep turning this down, that it may not be there waiting for me when I was felt like I would be ready. Rather, I need to kind of lean into the Lord saying, hey, you're ready, even though you may not think it is, maybe even though your friends may not think you are, things like that. Like, hey, you're ready. There's a lot of signs pointing to it. And I didn't want to risk losing what I had with Alex. And so I had told her kind of how I was feeling. And of course, she was so happy. And that's when we really started dating, was November. And that would have been 2019. And after we started dating, I really knew a couple months later, like for certainty, that like, hey, this is the girl I want to marry. This, I felt so strong about it, after a couple months of dating.
Once we were dating, we were pretty much talking about marriage super fast. Like, we knew that that was what we were called to. We knew we wanted to honor the Lord. We knew that marriage was in the books for us. So it was a topic that we would bring up constantly in all of our conversations. We would be on the phone for hours. And anytime we'd meet up, like we'd be talking for hours about it, of like about how the dynamic would work and all of that. So it was really cool. And we had honestly talked about it where it was going to be fairly quickly, because we were really attracted to each other. We knew that we wanted to stay pure in our relationship. I think a lot of couples nowadays justify that not getting married faster. It's okay because they don't feel like they're pure, but they're not really. Like, you just sacrifice slowly things until the point that you lose your purity. So we really wanted to honor that part as a couple. And yeah, we got engaged in May 2020. And it was the coolest couple of months that we were engaged, because we got married in August 2020. So it was only 3 months from the time we got engaged to the time we got married. And I wouldn't have it any other way. It was super hot at our wedding. It was uncomfortable. We didn't have everybody we wanted there. But, it felt from the Lord. And I think it's the way it had to be.
Yeah, so all that being said, it's cool to look back on that. It's been about 4 years now since we got married. I look at some of the things we've had to go through just in our adult life, because we got married really as we were starting adulthood too. Like I had just gotten my first full time job, and for the first time ever, and it was first time stepping out of school, the school bubble, and things like that. After about a year of having an apartment, we bought a home that we're recording in right now. But it's just been this crazy, crazy home with all these issues, these fixer-upper things, and it was like a lot harder than we thought it would be. But it was cool, like having somebody to lean on with that. I couldn't have done it by myself, you know? All that to say is there's so many things in the past 4 years that have happened that I look at and say, man, I don't know if I could have gotten through that by myself, but having someone like Alex has been, such a thing I'm grateful for because she really is the best companion, that I could have, going through all this stuff. And obviously, we're both really excited for our next chapter where we're going to be, moving out of state, trying to have kids, exploring new jobs for me at least. And Alex is really working hard on this channel and getting all this content up. So, and we want to do some other content too. So it's really exciting. So all that to say, we are both excited, and I wouldn't change our story anyway, to be honest.
So now that you heard our love story, I thought it'd be cool to give you just a couple of tips, maybe advice within marriage. And what better way than with my husband with me? So we have only been married for 4 years, going to 5, but we still have a lot of things that we've learned and I think would benefit you if you just listen to us for a little bit. We still have a lot to learn because we are only 4 years old. Wah.
We're a baby married couple. And we don't have kids yet, right? So there's a
Exactly.
lot that's going to shift. If some of y'all listening are parents, then you know that we're in for a treat with it, in good ways and bad ways. But yeah,
Yeah. So we both have like two different tips or advice. So I'll just start us off with something that's really cool and you should know within your marriage is your role, especially for women because this is towards women. You need to know your role as a woman. In Titus 2:4-5, it says, "In this way they will train the younger women to love their husbands, to love their children, and to be self-controlled, pure, fulfilling their duties at home, kind, being subject to their own husbands, so that the message of God may not be discredited." It is so powerful and it is so clear as to what our role is as women. And I think once you understand kind of like the way the Lord's designed you to be, you will avoid a lot of arguments. I remember
yeah,
before I quit my job to be a homemaker, I was working a 9 to 5 corporate job, and the main point of discussion and arguing was my job because it became like my child. I was tending to it. I was spending too much time with it, and it wasn't really giving me fulfillment, I guess. I didn't feel fulfilled or content. But once I found out like this design that the Lord's already made for us, which is pretty darn simple and amazing for all the ladies that don't want to do this, pray. Just pray that the Lord changes your mind because it is filled with so much more joy. But yeah, doing this was so much helpful and it helped our marriage a
yeah.
lot, just finding and understanding my role as a woman and his role as a man as well, as the leader of the home and such. What is one tip you have?
Yeah, and I'll add on to that too.
Mm-hmm.
When we got married, Alex was actually the breadwinner, so it was funny because she was I guess like a couple months into it actually, but
Yeah.
she, after a few months being married, she was making more money than I was, and we really didn't think anything of it. We're just like, oh, that's great, and her job required her to work more hours than mine, so it really was something that we didn't think much of because we both came from families where we weren't really taught like there's these different gender roles that God has designed. And it's funny because the Bible talks so much. So when we actually started reading that, we really realized like, hey, this is a little dysfunctional. So that did help our marriage a lot. So one thing I will say as well, on top of all that, as a tip, is to always aim to be on the same page with each other in marriage. And it's something that can be really hard at times. Again, you're these two different people coming together from, especially me and Alex. Alex grew up in Puerto Rico. I grew up in the U.S. here in Florida. We had very different cultures. Our families are very different, but similar in some aspects, but still a different culture. So, as much as we had similarities, and Alex is probably one of the people that I've met in my life who I felt most similar to, like in our values and stuff. So, even in our spot, we had like a lot of things that after we were married, like a lot of little things that we weren't on the same page with. And something that we really felt and we tried to do was let's not just ignore those things, but let's work and aim towards being on the same page. Because, and as I've learned with some of the times from trial and error, is if you do ignore those things, if you do ignore those things, they will come back and bite you, like a cat, right? It will be vicious and out of nowhere. But things such as work, right? What that looks like, future kids, how we want to parent, how we want to see our in-laws, and if there's any boundaries there and what that looks like. So there's so many different little things, but what's helped me and Alex is being on the same page. And if we're not on the same page, then let's talk about it. If it's hard to talk about, let's regroup maybe later in the day or the next day and talk about it some more. That's where you can find compromise and really kind of figure out, your emotions that you have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I kind of like my next tip or advice goes hand in hand somewhat with that. And it is that selfishness has to go out the window. When you are single or in the process still like dating, you're not really aware of how much you have to let go of this not good feature, because you become one, right? So you have to learn as a woman, I'm just talking to the ladies mostly, but as a woman, you have to learn how to, I wouldn't say submit, because although it does say that, a lot of people will take that poorly, but you do have to acknowledge that he is the leader of the home. And it's not like he controls you, because there's still
Mm-hmm.
conversation about things and stuff, but he is the head of the house. So at times you may not get everything you want. So you can't be acting like a child and do a whole temper tantrum if you don't get your way every time. Because again, it's learning how to be selfless. It's understanding that you are now one, and anything you do affects the relationship. And again, with the job, I didn't think that. I just thought, it's affecting me. I'm the one working. When in reality, it was affecting our marriage. So I
Right.
think that is a tip that I encourage all of you to do, is to let go of selfishness. And the way to do that is pretty simple. Talk with the Lord, talk with your spouse, see how you can, I guess, change your attitude in certain times, and just ask questions to your husband. That's like the easiest thing to do, is just talk with him, and he will point things out. Like, it'll happen. And it's good because you have to
Yeah.
learn how to get over that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And finally, yeah, a tip that I would give is if you are married or even engaged, don't give up, like don't just throw it away. Easier said than done, right? But it really, there's going to be times. And like I said, me and Alex, again, we had so many of the same values going into marriage. We have so many things that lined up, and we've still had some rough arguments in like the past 4 years here and there. A few rough fights, so that stuff happens. And it's easy in that moment, especially like because if you grew up like we did, you kind of date a little bit like around before you get
Mhm.
married. There's better ways to do that, but you kind of get this mindset of like once you start seeing the red flags, it's like okay, I'm out of here. But it's like you will see red flags in your spouse that you didn't see
Yeah.
when you were dating or engaged. So when you're married, you will see those things, but don't have that mindset of just like, oh, it's, I can't do that, because we've both been there. We both have had our red flags out. And I promise you, like, if you just have patience, like, those things are easily resolvable. Even the worst fights we have resolved within just a couple of days at most. It helps bringing the Lord into things. That's obviously what we recommend. But, just sometimes time is, and that's a biblical thing, is like time heals things. Like, we see that in the Bible all the time. Like, look in the Old Testament, for example, you'll see these stories about people that walk with the Lord, and yet like God would do things in like over the period of time. Jesus, for example, had to wait 30 years for his ministry to
Yeah.
start. So these are things that in marriage too with fights, like have patience, don't give up on things. And I say that too because I get like there's a growing trend where Christians are getting divorced, and I know Christians have gotten divorced forever. It's wrong most of the time, but I've been seeing it a lot in like circles that you normally wouldn't see it with. We came from a ministry school that was pretty effective, but yet we've seen like 3 or 4 couples get divorced from that school. It's just like crazy. And I promise you, like in most of those cases, if they just waited a little bit, had some patience, worked through it over time, it would have healed.
Yeah.
So again, that would be my final recommendation: is don't give up if you're married, if you're going through a rough time. Like there is healing, even if it doesn't look like it.
So, yeah, these are our 4 tips/advice that we have for you today. Probably at another time, we'll talk more about this. I don't know what it'll look like, but I think marriage topics are really important, especially in the Christian community, especially for us young people. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you all for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, comment, all the things, and share this with someone you know who's either even single. Heck, this is beneficial to anybody. So, yeah, That's it.